Hi there, I'm Nafisa Latic and this is Across the Balkans. On this episode, we look at Bulgaria's political deadlock that has gripped the country for months. Recent parliamentary elections have failed once again to produce a clear winner, exposing deep divisions. For the first time since 2009, Boyko Borisov's center-right GERB party has not come out on top. The populist party, There Is Such a People, or ITN, narrowly won the most seats. However, the party's leader, TV host Slavi Trifonov, is now struggling to form a coalition. And after previously rejecting all possibilities of leading a coalition government, he has now made a U-turn to say a coalition is possible after all, as long as it does not involve the former GERB party. Now, if Slavi fails to form a government, Bulgaria will have to go for its third election this year, which would coincide with presidential polls and could extend the political crisis. Dessislava Dimitrova reports on the latest developments from Sofia.
Bulgaria's parliament has its first sitting on Wednesday after the anti-establishment ITN party narrowly won elections this month. It has yet to talk votes in the fractured chamber to try to win support for a minority government. The second election in just 3 months elevated an anti-elite party as the winner to wedge out Borisov's center-right GERB party for the first time since 2009. The country's president will give the party There Is Such People, or ITN, led by popular showman and TV entertainer Slavi Trifonov, a mandate to form a government under the terms of the Bulgarian constitution. The first round of talks already began on Friday, and on the weekend talks between the parties themselves take place. The party's nominee for parliamentary speaker, legal expert Eva Mitova, was one of the victories of the party. She was elected as speaker, but even though the new party won the most seats in the election, 65, it fell short of the support needed to form a government of its own. 5 other parties have also made it into the 240-seat parliament, including Borisov's GERB with 63 seats, second came the Socialist Party with 36 seats, anti-corruption right group Democratic Bulgaria with 34 seats, the ethnic Turkish MRF party with 29 seats, and the center-left alliance Stand Up We Are Coming with 13 seats. ITN had declared before that it will make a coalition with the other 2 parties that took part in the anti-government protests here in Sofia last year, but as the talks are taking place, it seems that the party will have talks with all of the parties in the parliament except for the former leading party GERB to form a new government. Analysts have already predicted elections for the third time this year if a government isn't formed this time. But what we heard from the new majority party is that they will try to do such, and we will have a government within the next few weeks.
My guest today is Spasimir Domaradzki, a Bulgaria expert and Visegrad Insight Fellow. He is currently a lecturer at the Faculty of Political Science and International Studies of the University of Warsaw. Spasimir, thanks so much for being our guest on Across the Balkans. Now, why is it proving to be so difficult for There Is Such a People party to form a coalition?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. And indeed, the situation in Bulgaria is very difficult. The main issue is because the red lines that were being drawn prior to the April elections, let's just remind that we had elections in April, and we now had in July second elections after the government failing to being able to form a coalition. What is the big difference is that this time the first political party is the one that officially was raising the arguments of the protesters. And in order to simplify the Bulgarian political reality, it's worth saying that we have 2 types of parties. Parties that represent the so-called status quo, and on the other hand, we have parties that largely support the protests that were spreading across Bulgaria over the last year. And the big difference now is that although still there is no possibility for the protest parties to create a coalition government because they lack the majority of votes. Now the difference is that the currently leading party, There Is Such Nation, that's how the party is being called, has the chance to, in a sense, changed a little bit its attitude and is ready to look for a coalition government, including some of the parties that represent the status quo or the parties that are associated with the difficult political environment in Bulgaria.
Right, and ITN, as you were mentioning, now says it will enter talks on forming a coalition. This is quite a U-turn in the party's position. Before they were saying coalition government is not possible. Now they say it is possible if it does not include GERB party. So what do you think made Slavi Trifonov, the leader of the ITN, to change his mind?
Well, I think it's pure calculation in a sense. The current developments over the last 3 months worked well for his party. Two things were being accomplished. One was that the repeat of the elections was not being controlled by Borisov party, and it resulted in gaining another several election points. And on the other hand, GERB lost these election points, which costed them the first place. On the other hand, he was able to gamble after the first elections when he was a too-big coalition partner, but now all the stakes are in his hands and he doesn't have that much room for maneuvering. In other words, what interestingly they do, though, is they do not talk about coalition government in terms of coalitions and merging programs. They talk about gaining support for policies, for particular policies that will be implemented, and this is what they look for. It's a little bit puzzling because, on the other hand, the argument that they use is that they will still try to create their own government. As far as I understand, that it will be a minority government supported by the political parties based on agreement for the achievement of particular policies.
And if the talks fail again, what will that mean for Bulgaria, and what kind of consequences can we expect?
Yeah, well, that's a very difficult question because the perspective that comes ahead is not very bright, especially for ITN, particularly because if the state will continue to exist in this kind of, I would say, situation in which there is no stable government over the last half a year, when there are urgent issues that need to be resolved and nothing is being done because the technical governments do not have the public mandate, and in that respect it is more complicated. The situation would lead to instability that is very dangerous. But what is even worse, in my opinion, that can give a chance for the parties of the status quo, and this is Borisov's GERB, but also the Bulgarian Socialist Party and the Turkish minority party, the Movement for Rights and Freedoms, the chance to return to the political scene as the only credible political parties that are able to form government. And that would be, of course, a complete defeat of the protests, which were, as I mentioned, spreading across the country over the last year.
Spasimir, what are these urgent issues that need to be resolved in Bulgaria as soon as possible?
Well, we can mention at least three. Of course, COVID is one thing that is always around, but also we have a burning problem related to the relations with North Macedonia, which at this point hinders the EU perspective for this country. We also have the question of EU funding, which also requires efficient and prompt functioning of the government. These issues are, in a sense, frozen, but I also have the impression that the European Union understands the difficult political situation that takes place currently in Bulgaria.
And in your opinion, just briefly at the end, how do you see the situation unfolding in Bulgaria in the next couple of weeks?
Well, I do believe that the government will be formed. As I say, it will be a very specific formula. I'm very curious to hear because we try to observe closely how the negotiations go on. There are scarce informations, and you can see, and indeed, a very serious bargaining. Sometimes, I think, shallow and useless. But no matter what will be the argument, I think that the protest parties know that this is the last chance, indeed, to make a step forward, and they need to get into some kind of a deal, most probably with the socialists, and to a certain extent with the Movement for Rights and Freedoms, in order to push forward and to keep the spirit of the protest.
Okay, Spasimir, we'll continue to monitor the situation in Bulgaria here on Across the Balkans. Thank you so much for joining us, Spasimir Domaradzki.
Thank you
there.
very much.
Now to the Tokyo Olympics, and the first gold medal for anyone in the Balkans went to Kosovo when Distria Krasniqi won the women's 48-kilo judo final. Kosovo broke into celebrations after Krasniqi claimed the second ever Olympic medal for the country that only declared independence 13 years ago. Kosovar President Vjosa Osmani congratulated the 25-year-old athlete by tweeting, "Distria, today you stole the show. Today you made Kosovo shine in front of the world." Now, the 1998-1999 war in Kosovo, then a Serbian province in Yugoslavia, ended after a NATO military intervention that forced Serbian forces to withdraw. The UN ran the territory for 9 years before Kosovo declared independence in 2009, a move recognized by around 100 countries. But Serbia, alongside its allies like Russia and China, still rejects it to this day. To get more on this, I'm joined by journalist Shkumbin Ahmed Čekaj. He's in Pristina for us, and he's an editor at the Radio Television of Kosovo. Shkumbin, thanks so much for being with us. Congratulations, first of all. And the Olympics just kicked off. More medals underway, probably, for other Balkan nations. But I do want to talk about the first Balkan gold that went to Kosovo. It made Kosovars extremely proud. Give us a sense of the atmosphere in the country following that win.
Actually, what I can confirm is that the entire nation yesterday and 2 days before was in tears. In tears because we are still trying to embed ourselves in the world's map, to have the image and the people know where Kosovo is. So what these judoka fighters are really doing the best to embed our country in the world's map and give the image that we want to have in the world as people who work hard to achieve their own goals. And the goal this time has been gold by two of our judoka fighters who actually put Kosovo number 7 currently in the list of world countries that have won medals in this Olympics. So the entire nation actually is applauding, is actually on tears, emotional, because we are witnessing something that we have dreamt all the time.
Right.
As a journalist, I can say that when I speak on my personal, let's say, career, wherever I go outside Pristina, outside Kosovo, people still think that Kosovo is still on the war. That is a war-torn country. But now the image that we are sending is different.
Right. And this is only the second time Kosovo is participating in the Olympics. First time was in Rio 2016, if I'm not mistaken. But that first medal was also in judo. Seems like Kosovars are really good in this sport. What's the reason behind it?
Look, the main story here is for the man who has been training these girls. He was a judoka fighter himself, but because of the war and what Kosovo went through, he couldn't achieve his own goals and be on the world stage. So now he has worked so hard with these young ladies, with these wonderful athletes who are giving results. So Toni Kuka is now a national hero because he has this school of judo and is actually producing these gold medalists for Kosovo itself. In Kosovo, in the past, we used to say that we are very good on individual sports, but actually we are quite good in football as well. Probably you remember that last time in the stage for European Championship, we did quite well. However, judo is very popular here among the youngsters, and especially in Peja, the region in western Kosovo, which is producing these wonderful athletes.
Amazing, really. And can the sports in some way help in the reconciliation process in the Balkans, especially in the reconciliation process between Kosovo and Serbia? How significant is this being actually recognized by these big sporting events?
Speaking for Serbia itself, I don't think it's achieving something, because even in the media, they are referring to Kosovo as so-called Kosovo. And now everybody in Kosovo is mocking and laughing with this, because they are saying that the so-called Kosovo is being golden in Tokyo, while the neighboring countries are not yet. However, I mean, for the reconciliation, I don't think it's bringing something, let's say, significant, which we can be very proud of. However, something happened before this Olympics, when Serbian president said to Serbian athletes that even if they have to compete with Kosovans, they don't have to refuse as they did in the past. However, I mean, the approach of Serbian media and the nation towards the golden medalists of Kosovo is quite it's weird. However, this may this winning for Kosovo can have a positive impact for Kosovo itself in the region and the world. But in terms of reconciliation, I don't think it has any, let's say, direct impact so far.
Right, and give us just briefly an update on where are we when it comes to Pristina-Belgrade talks. What's the latest on that very important issue for both countries if they tend to move forward to the EU and NATO?
Having now a new government in Pristina, it seems that the dialogue is quite stalled. We had two meetings of Serbian and Kosovan leadership. However, they didn't produce any step forward. The only thing that they agreed is that they can continue dialogue in September. However, it is quite obvious that the European partners are a little bit worried about the process, because both sides are quite firm on their stances, and it doesn't seem that an agreement is on the side. Everybody was hoping that during this year or next year, it will be reached a breakthrough on having this normalization agreement between two countries, which is the aim of the European Union. However, it doesn't seem the case, because now are being open new topics, while Kosovo's prime minister has said that Kosovo is not ready to offer anything in the dialogue in Brussels. Thus, I don't think that the dialogue will produce something good in, let's say, in the short term. However, it remains to be seen in September how the European Union and also the US probably will engage much more to convince both sides to continue with probably a new approach on the dialogue.
Okay, Shkumbin Ahmetchekaj, thanks so much for that. Congratulations once again to you and to Kosovars. Amazing achievement during the Olympics so far. Shkumbin Ahmetchekaj, there, an editor at Radio Television of Kosovo. Thanks again. Thanks for watching this episode of Across the Balkans, the show dedicated to the people, places and stories of Southeastern Europe. Hope to see you next time. And from me and the team here in Istanbul, bye-bye for now.